have the #1 man with us today, Dr. Ed Alinsod, which I'll tell you about in a minute. But creating these new profit centers in your practice are key. And we have been working with practices. I think we were probably one of the first teams with Thermi going back 10 years ago or more to add vaginal rejuvenation to your practice. And Dr. Ed Alinsod, who is on today, I'm excited that he's joining us, offers surgical, but also the non-surgical options, which we'll talk about today. And since in the aesthetic industry, 85, if not 90% of your patients, aesthetic patients anyway, are women, why not offer some of these procedures? Check out your competition. You might be losing some of your patients to your competition. So women's sexual health is Dr. Ed Alinsod's #1 priority in his business, and he is a key opinion leader internationally. So what women want today is what we're going to hear about. So even if you are not in the business of being a gynecologist, there are lots of options, which we'll talk about today. In some states, a nurse practitioner, another provider could provide the non-surgical radiofrequency maybe type procedures. So Dr. Ed Alinsod has been doing this, I thought, for 100 years, but when I read his resume, I realize he's a little younger. But he's a director of an amazing clinic in California where he actually trains doctors from all over the world, South Coast Urology, and the founder of the Alinsod Institute of Aesthetic Vulvovaginal Surgery. That's a full mouthful anyway. But Dr. Alinsod is an international teacher, and he has programs of all kinds that he has actually trained and developed. And he's best known for developing the radiosurgical techniques for aesthetic gynecology. So I am proud to have him with us today and excited for you to hear his pearls and share his wisdom. And we're going to talk about elective gynecological procedures today. And so Dr. Alinsod, welcome. So happy to see you.
Thank you so much for the invitation. What a pleasure to be with you. We go many years back, don't we?
Yeah, long time.
Well, I'd like to first start by remembering all the men and women who perished this day 19 years ago and honor their legacies.
Thank you for that. Yes, that is true.
So today, I thought we should cover a few different topics. The first one are the devices and procedures that have made aesthetic gynecology something that's easy and safe to do in the office, and that can add to the practices of doctors worldwide, either procedures done by themselves or their nurses, PAs, nurse practitioners, that can really improve their bottom line. And also, not only that, but help their patients, help the women that they take care of improve their feminine conditions. So that's pretty much what I'm here to discuss with you about, and I'm happy to be led by you in our discussion.
So, I mean, there's so much to talk about, but the technologies today, I know that radio frequency was the wavelength of the future going back 10, 15 years ago when we started all of this. And I know you've taken it to different levels now. So maybe tell us about the radio waves of the lasers and how basic it is, because some people think of this as a big surgical procedure.
Right.
And a lot of med-spas can offer this radio frequency technology and of course get trained by you. So let's hear a little bit about the technology of today that is, I guess, the winner, because you hear about so many in every company now. When we started it, we were the only ones. Now we have probably a dozen competitors to the radio frequency, and some are more lasers, some are more radio frequency. So I guess a little bit of the differences and why you choose the radio frequency.
Sure. First of all, radio frequency started out in my field, in aesthetic gynecology and gynecology, as a surgical tool. In 2005, I started teaching how to do these radio frequency surgeries with something that looked like a pencil with a really fine hair point tip, just as fine as your hair. And I started doing labiaplasties with that. And so I did cosmetic reduction of the labia, and I I was able to do them in the office, in the clinic. So instead of taking the patients to the OR, I was able to free myself from the scheduling of the OR, and I was able to do it in my office. And I started teaching that around the world, and it became quite a popular thing that doctors, gynecologists, and plastic surgeons wanted to learn. And so, but that was kind of an invasive procedure because it was radio waves being used like a scalpel, like a knife. But once I had, for example, dissected out the tissues of the labial tissues, I noticed that when I changed the tip from a hair tip to a little round ball, and I touched tissues, I saw it shrink. The tissues kept shrinking when I would touch it, just like standard electrocautery tissues would shrink. So I embarked on a journey to find some way of shrinking tissues that didn't hurt, that didn't cause pain, that can be applied without surgery externally and shrink the tissues down. So the first company that came to the United States with a radio frequency device to shrink tissues, it was made for faces and neck, was a company called Elman International. And they came out with a device called the Pelvic. And I was the first one to get it. It was intended for face and neck, at least in gynecology. I was the first one on the West Coast to start using it. And of course, I started using the skin tightening device instead of for the face. I went straight to the vulvar tissues and found it to be so darn safe, so effective in shrinking tissues that I thought, hey, we have something here. I was shrinking the external tissues and then realized that there was no device that can shrink tissues deep inside the vaginal tissue. So patients who had laxity of their vagina or perhaps leaked urine or had fallen bladder, those are all from loose tissues. And I thought if we can shrink the tissues inside, design a device, that would be wonderful. So I went and designed something, and unfortunately my relationship with Elman went away when the company got bought by another company, and my project went away. So for 3 years, nothing happened. And finally in 2013, a guy named Paul Hirschman came up to me at my meeting. I've been given a meeting every year since 2006. And in 2013, he came up to me and said, after a meeting, I didn't know who he was. He was standing in the back of the room. And he came up to me, hey, Dr. Alinsod, is there something that we can do to create a product to help women with not just external loose tissues, but internally? And so I said, yes, I designed it 3 years ago. Here it is. I have 3 years of data. So that's how it got started. I had 3 years of data already. I redesigned the device. We submitted to the FDA in 2014, and 2015 is when all this started. And so the radio frequency device, the one I designed was Thermiva, took off like a rocket, and all around the world, radio frequency started getting used in the vaginal tissues. And now, like you said, there's many different companies out there who make their own devices. But basically, that's how it started. And also, I got to give credit to Photona and Deca. These are laser companies who also entered this space, not quite as early as I did, but they came out with a device in Europe and then brought it into the United States. So a laser device also came into the United States to help with the tissues in improving their moisture, tightening the skin a little bit. So in 2015 is when it all started. If you remember, we were at the aesthetic show together at 2015 and launched this thing. And in the past 5-6 years now, it's been pretty crazy.
What is really driving the market? I mean, what do you see as driving the market? To me, I must see it as it's multi-generational, where when we started, we thought it was only women in pre and post-menopause.
Right. Well, I think what's driving the market is women are finally finding out that they have options, not just surgical options. They're finding out that when they treat their conditions early enough, and they are taught by their nurses or doctors that there are options and solutions without going under the knife, that if you are proactive, you start early in your perimenopause or earlier years to improve your tissues, your vaginal tissues almost never age. You never get dry. You never get really saggy or loose. Your sensitivity is maintained by using preemptive treatments instead of waiting till things are really bad. And so that message slowly got out to the public with the social media went crazy. Facebook, Instagram, all the doctors, many doctors who I trained were very active in social media, more so than I am, not so good at it, but they were able to get the message out, and you were part of it. You were helping all these practices around the US get the message out that, hey ladies, we have treatments for you. You don't have to suffer with the problems of aging and menopause, at least in the feminine regions, and that you can be preemptive and help your own health, and maintain your femininity, restore your relationships, your sexual function. And there were so many things that the radio frequency devices could do, and it became more and more known by the public that radio frequency can do this. And then there were the lasers that can do this. They're not the same thing. They had different endpoints, but those things, minimally invasive, help patients realize they can take care of themselves without going under the knife. And I really think that was the message that got out and slowly filtered out to the world.
And this is all cash-based business. There's no insurance that really covers this, because it's more what I would say aesthetic, even though you'd almost think in some cases insurance would cover it.
Exactly. Insurance does not cover this. We're still probably a decade away from them thinking about covering this, maybe never. But you're right. It became affordable. For example, the procedure I developed, the Thermiva, instead of having a surgical procedure where you had a lot of downtime and you had costs, from the insurance, you were now willing to pay for no downtime, outpatient, no interruption of your life. So that became really attractive to patients, because they could get these treatments, get the results that they were looking for, not go under the knife, not interrupt their work or their ability to bring their kids to school. And so that was very attractive for the patient. It was almost like a lunchtime treatment in their half an hour that they had, that they can come in and get either an injection or radio frequency or a laser treatment and really improve their quality of life.
So do you get any pushback at all because it's a cash, procedure? We work, a lot of the doctors are using care credit and patient financing options to make it affordable. So it's affordable to everybody, not just people who have, the check, the money in their checkbook. So
Right.
how do you handle any challenges when it comes to payment?
Well, up front, we tell the patient that these are not covered by insurance. Of course, we have many patients that request that we submit it for insurance, but we tell them, I don't have relationships with some of the insurance companies. So we tell them, no, this is a cash-based practice. And most of them are willing to pay the fees that we have. We keep it competitive. We don't go crazy on the fees. So and so most of them are quite okay with it, because it's not a $10,000 surgery. Instead, it's a few $1,000s for the procedures, or several $100s for the procedures. And again, it's the value of their time and not being away from work that's really important for them.
Absolutely. But do you get any pushback because they can't afford it, or they want to have it, but they just can't do it now? Do you offer any patient financing options as an option so it becomes affordable to somebody who maybe is out of work, or somebody who's has an issue with finances right now?
We do. We have several finance companies that we work with. We have it on our website. We have one, we have various levels. Those who have really good credit can go to the financing company that has the lowest rates. And then those that have more marginal credit can go to a second choice, where the rates are higher, but they're able to be approved for these procedures. The profits are, like care credit, are taken from the doctor's side of things. And I'm willing to take that little hit to get the patients in the door, learning about the practice we have and the things that we have to offer for future things. Because it's not just the one visit. I'm wanting to take care of the patients for the rest of their life for this stuff. And it's not just a one and done kind of thing. It's building a relationship for a long time.
No, I think, I think you're smart, because the whole life cycle of the patient is very important. So I know women who go to gynecologists, and then when they go through menopause, their gynecologist is not that knowledgeable, or they'll spend 5 minutes with them. And I know your personality. I'm sure you spend a lot of time talking, and your nurses are well trained, and they, hold the hands of the patients. I remember from working with your office many, many years ago. It's funny because I remember when we started, Thermiva, and we started the events, and, Hirschman and Kevin O'Brien, they're like, Cheryl, how are we going to talk about it? We don't know how to talk about it. So we started, how do you start the conversation? And, I think even today, and it's 15 years later, I wouldn't even remember the years, but it's 15 or more years later now, and people are still having a hard time in certain parts of the country or in certain practices. How do you start that conversation? How do you talk about it? Now, for you, it's easy. For me, it's easy because we've been doing it a long time. But there's a lot of practices and a lot of places in our country that can't talk about it. So I think, the social media, as you said, and I think celebrities talking about it also made a big difference for all of us, because that brought it out into the open, brought it into the news. So your invention, Thermi's, marketing, and the combination of all the events and the training, I think it absolutely helped. But you know what? It's still needed out there. Almost like we're back in time, 15 years, when I go to some states or some areas in the country, and they're like, what? Vaginal rejuvenation? So I think we still have some more marketing and some more work to do on this, which is surprising so many years later.
Yeah, you're right. It's something that needs to be an ongoing thing, or else it gets out of the memories of our audience. The one thing that really helped us is something that you were involved with years ago, and it was exactly what you said. It was a project called Start the Conversation. And if you remember that, we made a video, and it was a video of me and several other doctors trying to teach future providers on how to start the conversation. First, by, for example, putting it on your history forms, your intake forms, to ask specific questions so that the patient knows that, hey, you have this available. What is this? What, you can do this for skin tightening. You can do this for a leaky bladder. And so it gets them thinking when it's right on your form and you're asking those questions. Plus the videos that you guys made, both intended for doctors, nurses, and the general public, that the doctor can put on their website or play in their lobby. Those were so helpful. That's how we got the conversation started for our patients. We sent links to from our website where we had the videos to our several thousand patients in a newsletter. And we had such a great response, because they'd watch the video and say, you have this available? We didn't know that. So for those who are sending newsletter to their patients, it's so important to have those short, precise videos that educate the patients.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. We're still teaching our practices and our providers to do short videos. Comes to everything in aesthetics, but now, talking about it with you, it really brings it back up that we really have to start the conversation again. And how do we start that conversation? I know that there are top trends and hot topics, and that's our next slide, to talk about the rise of the machines, which we did, but also the biologics and the science and the scientists. So maybe you can explain a little bit about that.
Well, after the machines came out, more and more research at the same time, a parallel track, was being done on biologics, at least in feminine health. The guy who was doing most of the studies, research, marketing on the use of biologics for genital or feminine conditions was not a gynecologist. It was Dr. Charles Reynolds, who was a primary care doctor, and he was studying the effects of platelet-rich plasma on genital tissue. Specifically he originally started using platelet-rich plasma, that's blood drawn and then spun, and then the yellow portion of the blood with the growth factors and anti-inflammatory agents were then re-injected into the base of the bladder or around the clitoral area or into the clitoris itself. That helped with sensitivity. So he started doing those studies back, 2012 or 13 or somewhere there, and he spoke at my meeting in 2014, 2015, and that started our long relationship and friendship. But he's really responsible for getting into the into the GYN world, platelet-rich plasma, and the thought of biologics. And so that has been such an efficient and easy transition into gynecologic practice, because gynecologists know how to inject. We know how to inject into the base of the bladder. We inject there all the time for local anesthetic before we do surgeries. We inject around the vulvar area before we do biopsies. So instead of injecting local anesthetic, you change it and inject platelet-rich plasma. And now I'm injecting also amniotic fluid because it's so anti-inflammatory. And when you inject it into these areas, you can help conditions such as the inflammatory lichen sclerosis or vulvar vestibulitis, those irritating things that occur in the vulva and vagina. And then you can inject it on the base of the bladder or in the neck of the urethra for those with either overactive bladder or stress, incontinence, or leaking with activities. And those with reduced sensitivities, you can inject it in the anterior wall of the vagina, where, if you believe in the G-spot, where that is, or where the nerves are, and you can inject it underneath the hood of the clitoris and into the body of the clitoris itself. And that has helped many, many patients. And Dr. Reynolds has been brilliant in his marketing and his teaching program to get this word out into the OBGYN, the family practice, the nurses. I think he's responsible for getting the word out on biologic more so than anyone in the field of aesthetic gynecology. So you have to give him credit for that. And then when I started using that and finding out that there is such a synergy of energy and biologics together, that's basically the core of my practice, energy plus biologics. And I call it synergy treatments, because you're using mechanical devices, radio waves, to increase the density of the small nerve fibers. You're using injections to also with growth factors to help the tissues regenerate and renew. And when you combine them together, there is a synergistic effects. My best results on patients are when I do multimodal treatments of energy plus biologic. And I think that's the future of gynecology, or at least aesthetic gynecology at this point. You can help these patients who weren't able to be helped for their overactive bladder, intractable urgency and frequency. They can't sleep through the night, and now you can help them. Before, you only had drugs, or you had Botox injections into the bladder, and now you can do these in your office.
That's amazing.
I mean, the patient's awake, no pain. They don't even know they're getting this injection on the base of the bladder. And with the radio frequency treatments, comfortable, warm feeling, no pain, and no downtime. That has really transformed my practice. The synergy of energy and biologics. So I've been teaching that all around the world. I started a online teaching program so that, doctors who in this day and age can't travel. I have a course that everyone used to travel to. You've been there. I used to have 4, 5, 6, 7 doctors for the day or 2-day course. They can't travel now. So I put all that in an online course, and so that these modern, useful, exceptionally safe technologies can be available to the practicing OBGYN, family practice, and even internal medicine, and many plastic surgeons who have their nurse practitioners who offer these treatments.
So is this a one-time treatment? Somebody comes in and it's a one-time? It used to be years ago when we were first testing the market, it was 3 once a month. So how has that changed and evolved?
Well, with radio frequency treatments, you have to have a series, and the most efficient and cost benefit number is 3 treatments, once a month for 3 months, followed by my old mantra was a yearly treatment. You do your 3 treatments and then touch up once a year. But I found out that patients would lose effect between 9 and 12 months. And so if I wait a year and a half for their touch-up treatment, some of the effects were lost. So I advise my patients, if you don't want to lose the effects of radio frequency or even lasers, CO2 or erbium lasers, you get your series of 3 and then touch it up every 6 months, kind of the lifespan, the life cycle of collagen. So it's approximately 6 months or so. And then for the biologics, the original treatments where you do 1 treatment and you repeat it yearly. But the same thing happens, is that many patients will have effects of improved sensitivity or control their lichen sclerosis and itching for anywhere from 6 months to a year. I have patients up to a year and a half, and then the symptoms come back if you don't touch it up. So we get into the patient's mind that this is not a one and done, that you have to maintain it. So I tell my patients, whether it's biologic or radio frequency or laser, that you should have a touch up once every 6 months if you can afford it, or you have the time to do it. Those are my best results when I touch them up every 6 months.
So you do have the life cycle of the patient, because they're indebted to you every 6
Right.
months to come back. So
Right.
do you personally do all of your patients, or do you have somebody in your practice who's also helping you?
I'm one of those rare practices where I'm the only provider. It's me and my 2 medical assistants and my front desk person. So since it's my invention, I want the best results. So I do all of them, 100%. I do all the Thermiva treatments. I know most practices have a ancillary staff nurse or PA doing the procedures, and they do an excellent job. But you know what? It's my baby, so I'm going to do them all. And the injections are the same. I do all my treatments. I may have a higher price point, but my patients are willing to come in and see me because they know I'm the one doing it. They're not going to have someone else, an ancillary staff, performing the procedures.
No, I think that's terrific, because you've grown so much over the years that you would think by now you probably have, a dozen other physicians in your office. So I give you credit for that. But going back to Dr. Runnels' O-Shot and his marketing, which was amazing, and you're still paying, and people are still paying to use his, O-Shot. I know you have your A-Shot. So tell us about the A game.
Well, the O-Shot is the platelet-rich plasma that Dr. Runnels copyrighted or trademarked, and it's the injection of platelet-rich plasma. So it works very, very well. And I also now add amniotic fluid to the mix. I can either inject amniotic fluid by itself or mix it in with Dr. Runnels' PRP to make an O-Shot with amniotic fluid. The company that I purchase it from is called Amdrop, AMDROP, is the actual product. It's made by Amnion LLC, the company. And it basically is rocket fuel for your PRP. It boosts the concentration of a patient's platelet-rich plasma by 2 or 3 times, because as you age, you'll produce less growth factors. For example, the PRP of a 20-year-old versus a PRP of a symptomatic 80-year-old is very different. So that's why you don't get such good results as the patient ages. So you can get the same level of growth factors and cytokines by giving a boost of amniotic fluid. Again, mine is called Amdrop, and I mix it with a PRP, and they will get the same concentration as they used to have maybe within their 20s and 30s, because it'll boost the growth factors and cytokines. And so that's how I started using amniotic fluid. People call it the A-Shot because it's amniotic fluid or Amdrop, but I don't want to.
It was the Alinsod.
No. I don't put Alinsod on anything other than my institute where I train. So the A-Shot is really for amniotic fluid. It's not. I don't market it to compete with the O-Shot. I think it's really O-Shot with amniotic fluid. I think I don't want to mess the messaging up. It's really an O-Shot with amniotic fluid augmentation or supplementation. Some people call it the A-Shot, and that's not Alinsod, that's amniotic fluid, and it's part of the O-Shot. That's the message I want to give. It's not separate. The technique is exactly the same, so you got to give Runnels the credit for that.
No, absolutely, you have to do that. I totally understand that, and know him, and know of all his unique trends and trainings, and he's still going at it, which is great.
Yes, very vigorously. He's got probably close to probably 3,000 followers or paying customers, and who are very, very loyal. They get a lot of benefit from joining his program, his ACCMA, Cellular Medicine program. I'm a member of it. I pay my licensing for the O-Shot and the vampire procedures for vulva and the face. I'm happy to pay that because I get so much benefit from what he provides. You have to be willing to pay for excellence, to pay for marketing, to obtain services for example, what you provide, if you want to get to that next level, trying to do it on your own will be very, very difficult. I can't do it on my own. I have to rely on experts such as you. And you know what? I'm willing to pay the monies because I know it's going to come back and help me 20 times over.
Well, listen, you aren't taught marketing and social media in medical school, that's for sure.
No, I missed that class.
And I think most doctors and providers out there have missed that class too, because it probably still doesn't exist. Or now that I hear maybe there's a 15-minute, same thing when it comes to nutrition, maybe you get a 15-minute overview. But
Yeah.
One thing that as a hot topic trend, and then we can kind of get to more of a close because I know we want to keep this short, is, so now we have all these women out there and they want to be sexually active, and they're feeling better about themselves, or they're feeling sexy again. So now we have what was, Ronald's P shot. So, what do you do for the men, or what do you recommend for the men that want to be with all these women that now you are, driving up their sex drives?
Well, one thing that I do in my practice, I do have a bioidentical practice where I take care of men and women. So for the men, I do offer the pellets, the testosterone pellets. The pellets are helpful in that it helps with their interest in sex. It affects, testosterone actually helps affect the fantasy centers in your brain so that you have an interest in sex. It also helps things like, lean body mass in your bone and all that. But that's what I do for men. And the P shot, I send it out to my colleague who is a urologist and does those treatments. I want to keep my practice pretty much men except for the pellets. And so I've trained on the P shot and actually train doctors on how to do it, but I send that out. I have a lobby full of women. I don't want them to feel uneasy when there's men there. So I've decided in my practice that I will send the ED patients to a very excellent colleague of mine, Dr. Aaron Spitz, who wrote the penis book. I send it to him.
Okay. I mean, I think that's a great answer, because the truth is, when women are sitting there and they want to talk or start the conversation, and then a man walks in the room, it used to be the same way when, as a male physician, and you had to start the conversation talking to a woman. Being a gynecologist, it's easier. Not being a gynecologist, not so easy. Not everybody finds the conversation, as we said early, or, easy to talk about. And so to really close on today, I guess there's so many good points that you have covered, and what women want and how doctors can get trained, and the technologies that are out there that are non-surgical. Are you doing much of surgery, or really most of the practice now has waned to the non-surgical?
That's a good question. My revenue, I looked at it. My revenue is about 70% surgical. I'm still a surgeon. I do a lot of labiaplasties, vaginoplasties for patients who want something permanent, and they're not they live far away. They don't want to come back for repetitive treatment. So my patients from the East Coast, where you are, or in Europe, who fly in, they want surgery. They're looking for my expertise and skills with my hands. And then the local Los Angeles, San Diego, Orange County patients are the ones that come in for the non-surgical stuff. Although I do have many that come in once a year from out of state, out of country for the injections. They come in for that. I tell them that many other doctors I've trained over the years in their area, but they're willing to come in. And so I do teach a lot of doctors on how to do these procedures. And I do tell them that one of the core things is do the non-surgical, learn bioidentical hormone therapy, learn pellets, learn creams, because that brings in that population of patients who are going to need your help, the perimenopausal, menopausal patients who have vaginal laxity, who may want your radiofrequency treatments. And the core, really, if you look down, if you dig deep and see what is the common thread here, is they're all perimenopausal, menopausal, needing and requesting hormones. So a bioidentical hormone practice for those who are going to be in a cash business, I think is essential. because that is what holds everything together, that brings them in. Not for the labial surgeries, but at least for the lasers or radiofrequency treatments. And so I have an educational program that can teach both surgical and non-surgical. The non-surgical is probably the fastest growing field of my training. It's doubled and tripled over the years. The surgical training has been also quite a rapidly growing program, but now all the doctors I've trained over the years have their own training programs all around the world. And so I'm competing with my own graduates. And so I've now made all those courses available online, and I'm about to launch it. I'm going to launch my labial workshop, extensive workshop with dozens and dozens of videos that are both narrated and live, that I basically made it so that the doctor feels like they're right over my shoulder, right beside me, in HD quality doing the surgery. So when they put it up on the big screen, it feels like I'm right in front of the patient. And I think that's the future of aesthetic gynecology will be the online courses, because not everyone can come to Laguna Beach and train with me, especially our international doctors. I have a doctor from Madrid and from Cairo, Egypt, who had to cancel, and I had to transfer the training from an on-site to a online training, and they were my guinea pigs on my courses, and so far it's been well accepted. And so that's where we're heading. We're going to more surgical online, especially for gynecologists. They know all the concepts. They know what I'm talking about. But for those who may not be gynecologists at heart and need eyes-on, hands-on, we'll have available on-site training still.
Well, that's great. Well, I guess the silver lining with COVID is we're all doing much more. I get to see everybody more on Zoom, live stream education, which, you know, I'm doing every few days, have programs. So I think what you're doing is a great service for yourself as well as for the other physicians, especially now, you know, during these COVID times. So I guess, you know, in closing, is there something that you think is a key takeaway for somebody starting up, or somebody who's adding vaginal rejuvenation to their practice? I mean, you've given us such great pearls, and you know, I'm so excited that you were able to share this with us so early in the morning for you.
It's okay. There are probably 3 take-homes. The most important keys are: don't go overboard in spending tons of money buying technology. Pick something that can cover your practice and can work. For example, a gynecologist. I'll give you my biases. A gynecologist should have radiofrequency in their office. I can't see how a modern gynecology practice goes forward and tries to capture the cash market without radiofrequency, because it can help with the tightening aspects, the beauty aspects of the vulva. It can help with overactive bladder, lichen sclerosis, dryness, atrophy, things like that. So that one device can help with a lot of gynecologic conditions. So don't go out and buy a laser, a radiofrequency, a high food device. Just look at your practice and see what you need. A plastic surgeon, however, may be better served by going to a laser, because many plastic surgeons have a laser center. So for them, it may be ideal to have a laser-based practice. So don't go crazy. Pick one major technology that will work in your current setting, your current practice, and then over the years you can add on things. So don't go crazy. Next, have your core practice of bioidentical hormones, if you're able to do that, because that will bring in all the other patients. So a core bioidentical hormone practice, one core technology, and lastly, the hardest one is learning surgical skills, not taught in residency, not taught in fellowships. And that one you can only get by doing, and also taking courses such as the one I provide. There are many other courses around the world and even in the US, but you'll eventually need to learn how to do the labiaplasty or vaginoplasty correct. and also learn to do them in the office. So you're not at the mercy of a surgery center or a hospital in terms of scheduling. You can control your practice. It's all about controlling your practice. You make more money in your office than driving out to this surgery center, that surgery center. I used to have 3 surgery centers, and the time I spent going around driving was crazy. And going around then, if I did them in the hospital, doing rounds was crazy. I would have to wake up, you know, crazy hours to finish rounds before the office. So I gave up my hospital privileges, and I only have 1 surgery center now. And I've learned to do 99% of these surgeries in the office. So the last thing is improve your surgical skill and learn how to do it in the office.
No, I think that's great. And I think, you know, one of the key points that you didn't mention, and I know your staff, and I know the quality and the training and the time and effort you put into your staff is one of the key things, because it's, you know, yes, it's you and it's your hands-on and it's your ability to have a happy patient. But, you know, the person meeting them, greeting them, following up with them, the person on the phone, the nurses that are assisting you, they're so important. And there's so many physicians and providers that really don't give enough credit to their staff and train them or treat them well enough or underpay them. You know, giving bonuses, you know, help, they're part of the growth and development of a practice. And I know that you know that. And it's one of the things as consultants that we often really try to talk to the providers about. So all of the things you said are amazing, but I think they also have to pay a lot of attention, not only to the atmosphere that somebody's walking into in their practice and how they're treated, but a lot of that customer service savviness, which is, you know, trainable to most. Not every, you know, sometimes we go in and do an assessment, we realize this staff is not going to work in a cash pay business, you know. But I know that you do a very good job of that. And I don't know if there was a comment you had on that.
Yes, I do. The most important part of my practice is my staff. I make sure that they're happy. I have to gauge the laughter in the office, and I make sure that I support them. I make sure, one, they're at the top end of the scale in terms of how much they're getting paid around the area, because everyone tries to hire my staff away. I can't even count how many times doctors I train in the area will try to hire my staff away. And so I make sure that I give them all the perks that I'm legally able to, like their health insurance, their fully matched 401k, the bonuses, their time off, that I pay for 1 or 2 educational experiences for them. If they want to learn how to do, for example, one staff I have wants to learn how to do 3D photography, which helps my business. So I sponsor her training. One other wants to learn how to do really tough blood draws. I'll sponsor their training for that. So whatever is the passion of that staff member, I'll fully support. They want to get trained, I'll pay for it, because you know what, it only enhances my practice. And so the staff is the most important thing. I have really low turnover of my staff. My front desk person's been there 17 years, and my 2 medical assistants are only the 3rd set I've had in my entire career. So, oops, sorry about that.
I guess our time is just about up. And funny that we were talking today, because we found one of my articles about how do you talk to your clients or your patients about vaginal rejuvenation that was published in Metaesthetics magazine. So we have that today as one of the handouts for anybody that does log on. We will also get you the link. We'll have the link on thebeautifulforever.com. And if there's any questions, of course, we'll send them right over to you, because we're running out of time today and I didn't want to take up more of your time. But I thank you so much, and I really look forward to talking again. Maybe we'll do a hormone workshop.
Well, that's fantastic, Cheryl. Thank you very much. And for those of you out there who don't know Cheryl, she really has been responsible for getting the aesthetic gynecology word out from day one. She was there right when this field opened up. She knows the field. She knows what the patients want and what the doctor needs in their practice. So if you have a chance to get Cheryl to help you, I think you guys should all do it.
Oh, thank you. That was very sweet and unsolicited.
Yes.
Well, thank you. And
Thank you.
It was great having coffee with you. We'll have to do it another day soon. I look forward to it. And thank you for your time today. It was wonderful.
Thank you very much. Have a great weekend.
You too. So to finish up today, we will just talk a little bit about what's going on next and keeping your business healthy. The beautifully profitable book we have here at 50% off for the e-version. It's actually a digital resource guidebook. We did away with ebook. And we also offering complimentary sessions if you want to expand and create a new profit center, whether it's something we talked about today or we didn't. We're available and very excited. Didn't launch yet, but just about to launch. We have our first dozen, I guess, mentors. So the Beautiful Forever University Mentorship Roundtable will be announced soon, and we already have full classes, so we're really excited about that because I'm an educator by trade. So we would like you to save the dates for our next exciting programs that are coming up. You can always find them on the website, beautifulforever.com, or follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Instagram, it's beautiful with the number 4, ever 201. Originally started out in New Jersey and New York. So we'd love to see you. And on the next slide, we have our next 4 talks. Very exciting to have wellness with Dr. Derek DeSilva coming up. And then we have keys to filling your schedule with Dr. Whitman, who's very good at that. And Miami, the deep dive into the top procedures and what's going on in Miami with Alan Rubenstein, a very well-known plastic surgeon. And everybody knows Dr. Gold. Adjusting your medical spa and your dermatological through COVID and what's going on in Tennessee. So Dr. Michael Gold will be on with us on October 6th. So I'm looking forward to our great lineup. And in between, we have some talks and we're available to talk with you. And we look forward to all of your questions. So send them over and we'll get them answered. Have a great weekend.